Good morning, everyone. Please be seated. I need to tell you about a case that happened in my courtroom 3 weeks ago, a case that I think about every single day, a case that changed how I see people, how I understand sacrifice, how I think about what truly matters in life. And if you find cases like this meaningful, please subscribe to my channel. I share cases just like this one, December 9th, 2024, Friday afternoon, around 3 o'clock. What walked into my courtroom that day looked simple on paper. Petty theft, shoplifting, $23 worth of groceries should have taken 10 minutes to process. It took over an hour, and by the end, every single person in that courtroom was crying, including me. Let me tell you what happened. The bailiff called the case, State of Rhode Island versus Marcus Williams, shoplifting, stop and shop on Elwood Avenue, November 21st, 2024. A man walked through the courtroom doors wearing a dark blue janitor's uniform, the kind with a name patch sewn on the chest. I could see it said Mark in red stitching. He was in his late 50s, I'd guess, African-American, graying hair, cut short, clean shaven. He moved slowly, carefully, like someone who was very tired or very sad or both. He had kind eyes. That's what I noticed first. Even from my bench, I could see his eyes were gentle, but there was something else there too. A deep sadness, the kind of sadness that lives in a person's face that becomes part of who they are. He walked to the defendant's table, stood there quietly, didn't sit down, just waited. I looked at the file in front of me. Marcus James Williams, age 58, address listed as 847 Prairie Avenue, Providence, charged with shoplifting from Stop and Shop. Items taken: bread, milk, eggs, peanut butter, and bananas. Total value $23.47. The arresting officer's report said Mr. Williams had been observed by store security placing items in his jacket pockets. When he attempted to leave without paying, he was stopped by security. He didn't resist, didn't run, just stopped and said he was sorry. Police were called. He was arrested, released on personal recognizance the same day. That was 2 weeks ago. Now he was here in my courtroom facing charges for stealing $23 worth of food. I said, Mr. Williams, you're charged with shoplifting from Stop and Shop on November 21st. The value of the items taken was $23.47. How do you plead? He said quietly. Guilty, Your Honor. I took the items. I'm guilty. His voice surprised me. It was educated, articulate, well-spoken, not what I expected from someone in a janitor's uniform who'd been caught shoplifting groceries. I asked if he had an attorney. He said, no, Your Honor, I can't afford one. I'm representing myself. I nodded, asked him to tell me what happened in his own words. He took a breath, started speaking. He said, Your Honor, on November 21st, I went to Stop and Shop after my shift ended. I work as a janitor at Brown University. I clean the science buildings. My shift ends at 2:30. I went to the store because I needed food. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. I had no money. My last paycheck went to other expenses. I was hungry. I walked around the store for maybe 20 minutes, looking at food, trying to decide what I needed most, what would last longest, what would give me the most nutrition for the least bulk, because I knew I'd have to hide it. I took bread, milk, eggs, peanut butter, bananas, basic things I could eat for several days. I put them in my jacket pockets. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was stealing, but I was so hungry, and I didn't see another choice. When I tried to leave, the security guard stopped me, asked me to empty my pockets. I did. Didn't argue, didn't make excuses. The police came. They were very professional, very kind, actually. They arrested me, but they weren't rough, weren't mean. And here I am, guilty, ready to accept whatever punishment you decide. He stopped talking, just stood there waiting. I sat there looking at this man, this 58-year-old janitor who'd stolen $23 of food because he was hungry. I asked Mr. Williams, why hadn't you eaten in 3 days? Don't you get paid regularly? He said, yes, Your Honor, I get paid every 2 weeks, but my last paycheck I had to use for other things. Medical bills, mostly. I had nothing left for food. Medical bills. I asked if he was sick. He shook his head, said, no, Your Honor, the bills aren't for me. They're for my late wife. Late wife, past tense, something in his voice when he said those words, something that made my chest tighten. I said, I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Williams. When did your wife pass away? He was quiet for a moment, then said, November 18th, Your Honor, 3 days before I took the food. 3 days before he'd stolen food, 3 days after his wife died. The courtroom was completely silent, everyone listening. I said gently, Mr. Williams, can you tell me what happened? Only if you're comfortable. He nodded, started speaking again, and what he told me over the next 30 minutes was one of the most heartbreaking stories I've ever heard. He said, "Your Honor, my wife's name was Dr. Catherine Williams, Catherine Ann Williams. She was 60 years old. We were married for 34 years. Catherine had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She was diagnosed in March of 2019, almost 6 years ago. The doctor said she had maybe 6 months to live, maybe a year with aggressive treatment. She lived for 5 years and 8 months. She was strong, so strong. But pancreatic cancer is brutal, Your Honor, especially stage 4. The survival rate is less than 3%. Most people don't make it past a year. Catherine made it almost 6 years because she fought, because she refused to give up, because she wanted every possible day with me." His voice was steady, but I could hear the emotion underneath, the grief that was barely contained. He continued. "When Catherine was diagnosed, we were both working. She was a professor. I was in research. We had good jobs, good insurance. We thought we'd be okay financially. But cancer treatment is expensive, Your Honor. Even with insurance, the co-pays, the medications, the experimental treatments that insurance doesn't cover, the travel to specialists, the time off work. We spent everything we had, our savings, our retirement. We took out loans, second mortgage on our house, maxed out credit cards, and then Catherine couldn't work anymore. Too sick, too weak. She had to go on disability. That's when I quit my job. I stopped him, said, 'You quit your job. Why?' He looked at me, said, 'Because Catherine needed me, Your Honor. She needed full-time care, someone to help her eat, help her bathe, manage her medications, drive her to appointments, sit with her when the pain was too bad, hold her when she cried. We couldn't afford a home health aid. Those cost thousands of dollars a month. Insurance covers very little. So I quit my job and I took care of her myself. I asked, 'What job did you quit?' He hesitated, then said, 'I was a research scientist, Your Honor. I had a PhD in molecular biology from Harvard. I worked at Brown University in their cancer research lab. I've been there for 22 years. The courtroom went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. A PhD from Harvard, a research scientist, 22 years at Brown, and now he was a janitor cleaning the same buildings where he used to conduct research. I couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, I said, 'Mr. Williams, you had a PhD from Harvard and you gave it up to care for your wife.' He said, 'Yes, Your Honor. It wasn't really a choice. Catherine needed me. She was dying. I loved her, love her. I couldn't let her go through that alone. I couldn't let strangers take care of her. So I quit.' We lived on her disability payments, about $1,500 a month, not enough for rent and medical bills and food and everything else. But we managed somehow. I sold our house to pay off the medical debt. We moved to a small apartment, 1 bedroom, but it was okay. We were together. Catherine died at home in our bedroom. On November 18th at 4:32 in the morning, I was holding her hand. She opened her eyes one last time, looked at me, said, 'I love you, Marcus. Thank you for everything.' And then she was gone." He stopped, took a shaky breath, wiped his eyes. Please subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. The worst part, Your Honor, is that her last medical bills came after she died. The final week in hospice, the medications, the equipment, total of $8,700. Insurance denied the claims, said some of it wasn't medically necessary. I got the bills 3 days after Catherine died. While I was still trying to figure out how to plan a funeral I couldn't afford, how to keep living in a world where she didn't exist anymore. I paid what I could toward the medical bills, used the money I'd saved for her funeral, had to choose between burying my wife properly and paying medical debt for treatment that didn't even save her. I chose the medical debt. Catherine would have wanted that. She was always responsible about bills. I had her cremated instead of a traditional funeral. Cheapest option, $350. I keep her ashes in a simple wooden box in our apartment. Can't afford a cemetery plot or a proper urn. And after paying the cremation and as much medical debt as I could, I had $11 left. $11 to my name. That was my financial situation on November 21st when I went to Stop and Shop. I hadn't eaten since Catherine died, couldn't bring myself to eat, didn't care about food. But on the 3rd day, I got dizzy, weak, realized I needed to eat something or I'd pass out. And I had $11. Not enough for a week of groceries, not even enough for 2 days. So I took what I needed and I got caught, and I deserved to get caught because what I did was wrong. He finished speaking, stood there quietly, tears running down his face. I sat at my bench with tears running down my face too. I'm not ashamed to admit it. This man, this brilliant scientist with a PhD from Harvard, who'd given up everything to care for his dying wife, who'd spent every penny trying to save her, who'd held her hand as she died, who couldn't even afford to eat after she was gone. And he was in my courtroom for stealing $23 of food. I had to take a moment, compose myself. Then I asked Mr. Williams, why did you become a janitor at Brown? Of all the jobs you could have taken, why that one? He smiled slightly, a sad smile, said, because Brown was where I used to work, Your Honor, where I did my research for 22 years. When I needed a job after Catherine died, I applied to work there as a janitor. I wanted to be near the place where I'd been happy, where I'd done meaningful work, where I'd contributed to cancer research, ironically, trying to find cures for the disease that killed my wife. And as a janitor, I get to walk past my old lab sometimes late at night when I'm cleaning. I look through the windows at the equipment I used to use, the research I used to do. It's comforting somehow, a connection to who I used to be, plus the job has benefits. Basic health insurance, modest pay. It's enough to cover my rent and utilities, just not enough for food after the medical bills. I looked at this man, this PhD scientist working as a janitor so he could be near his old life, his old self, his old purpose. I asked, what was your research about? What did you study? His face changed, became animated for the first time. He said, I studied targeted drug delivery systems for cancer treatment, Your Honor, trying to develop methods to deliver chemotherapy drugs directly to tumor cells without damaging healthy tissue. The problem with traditional chemotherapy is it kills everything, cancer cells and healthy cells. That's why patients get so sick, why they lose their hair and their immune systems crash. I was working on nanotechnology applications, microscopic particles that could carry drugs directly to cancer cells, target them specifically, kill the cancer without destroying the patient. We were making progress. Real progress, had some promising results in mouse models. We're about to move to larger trials. And then Catherine got sick and I left and someone else took over my research. They've made some advances, published papers I should have written, but that's okay. The work continues. That's what matters. I sat there stunned. This man had been working on cancer treatments and then his wife got cancer and he gave up his research to care for her. The universe has a cruel sense of irony sometimes. I said, Mr. Williams, I'm going to do something I don't usually do. I'm going to ask you a question that might seem strange, but I need to know. If you could go back knowing what you know now, knowing that Catherine would die anyway, knowing that you'd lose everything, would you still quit your job to care for her? He didn't hesitate. He didn't pause to think, just looked me in the eye and said, yes, Your Honor, without question. Every time I'd give up everything again for one more day with her, for one more hour, for one more minute. She was my wife, my best friend, my everything, and she was scared and in pain and dying. How could I not be there? How could I choose a job over her? Choose career over love. The money doesn't matter. The job doesn't matter. The PhD doesn't matter. What matters is that when Catherine needed me most, I was there. I held her hand. I told her I loved her. I made sure she didn't die alone. That's worth more than any research paper, more than any career, more than anything. The courtroom erupted, people sobbing. The prosecutor was crying. The court reporter was crying. The bailiff was wiping his eyes. I had to call a brief recess. Couldn't continue. Needed to compose myself. When we reconvened 10 minutes later, I made my decision. I said, Mr. Williams, I'm dismissing this case. All charges dropped. You're not going to have a criminal record. You're not going to pay any fine. This never happened. He started to object. Said, Your Honor, I broke the law. I should face consequences. I said, Mr. Williams, you faced enough consequences. You've lost your wife, your career, your savings, your home, your future. You've sacrificed everything for love. And our legal system is going to punish you for being hungry after all that. No, absolutely not. This case is dismissed. You're free to go, but I'm not finished. Officer Jackson, please come here. My bailiff approached the bench. I reached into my wallet, took out $200, everything I had on me, gave it to Officer Jackson. I said, please give this to Mr. Williams for groceries, for bills, for whatever he needs. Officer Jackson handed Marcus the money. Marcus looked at it, started crying again, said, Your Honor, I can't accept this. It's too much. I said, it's not a gift from the court. It's from me, Lauren Lake. As one human being to another, please take it. He took it, held it like it was precious. Said, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much. But I still wasn't done. I looked at the prosecutor, a young woman named Jennifer Walsh. I said, Miss Walsh, I know you have discretion in these matters. If you agree, I'd like to do something. She said, absolutely, Your Honor, whatever you think is appropriate. I turned to the courtroom, said, is there anyone from Brown University here today? Anyone at all? A woman in the gallery stood up, said, I am, Your Honor. I'm Dr. Patricia Chin. I'm a professor in the molecular biology department at Brown. Perfect. I said, Dr. Chin, did you hear Mr. Williams' testimony about his background, his research? She said, yes, Your Honor. I knew Dr. Williams. We worked together for years. He was brilliant, one of the best researchers we had. When he left, it was a huge loss to the department. I said, Dr. Chin, would the university be interested in Dr. Williams returning in any capacity, research, teaching, anything? She didn't hesitate, said, absolutely, Your Honor. We'd love to have him back. His expertise is invaluable, and his work on targeted drug delivery was groundbreaking. I looked at Marcus, said, Mr. Williams, you heard that? Chin is offering you a chance to return to your real work, your real calling. Would you be interested? Marcus was shaking, said, Your Honor, I don't know. I'm not the same person I was. I've been away from research for 5 years. The field has moved on, and I'm not sure I can contribute anymore. Dr. Chin stood up, walked to the front of the courtroom, stood next to Marcus. She said, Marcus, you're one of the most brilliant scientists I've ever known. Your work was revolutionary. Yes, the field has advanced, but we need people like you. People who understand not just the science, but the human cost. People who've lived through what our research is trying to prevent. Come back, please. Let me talk to the department chair. We can find a position for you. Maybe not your old position right away, but something research assistant, lab coordinator, something to get you back in the field. Marcus looked at her, said, I'm a janitor now, Patricia. I clean toilets in the buildings where I used to work. How can I go back? She said, you're not a janitor, Marcus. You're a scientist who took a brief detour to care for someone you loved. That doesn't diminish who you are. It enhances it. It makes you more human, more compassionate, more valuable. Come back. We need you. Marcus broke down, sobbing. Dr. Chin put her arm around him, let him cry. After a minute, he looked up, said, okay, I'll try. I'll come back for Catherine. She'd want me to continue the work. The courtroom erupted in applause. People standing, clapping, crying. I banged my gavel, said one more thing. I'm going to make some calls. I know people. We're going to see about getting some of that medical debt forgiven or reduced, and we're going to make sure you have what you need while you transition back to research work. Officer Jackson, please get Mr. Williams' contact information. I'll be following up personally. Marcus looked at me, said, Your Honor, why are you doing this? Why do you care? I said, Mr. Williams, because I'm a mother, a wife, a human being. And if I were in your situation, I hope someone would show me the same compassion you deserve. You didn't steal that food because you're a criminal. You stole it because you're a human being who is broken by grief and poverty. And our job isn't to punish that. Our job is to help. That's what the justice system should do. Show justice, yes, but also show mercy, show humanity, show love. Marcus nodded, couldn't speak, just nodded. I dismissed court, told Marcus he was free to go. As people were leaving, several people approached Marcus, gave him money, gave him their business cards, offered help. One elderly woman gave him a $100 bill, said her husband had died of cancer 5 years ago. She understood, she wanted to help. A young couple gave him $50, said they didn't have much, but they wanted to contribute. By the time Marcus left the courtroom that day, he had over $800 in cash and a dozen offers of assistance. And he had hope. For the first time since Catherine died, he had hope. Subscribe to my channel to see more cases like this one where justice meets compassion. Over the next 2 weeks, I made good on my promises. I called the hospital, talked to their billing department, explained Marcus's situation. They agreed to forgive 70% of Catherine's medical debt. The remaining 30% they put on an affordable payment plan, $25 a month. I called some colleagues, put together a small fund, raised $3,000 for Marcus to help him get back on his feet. And Dr. Chin called me, said the department chair had approved a position for Marcus research associate, not his old rank, but a real research position, good salary, full benefits starting in January. I called Marcus, told him the news. He cried again, said he didn't know how to thank me, thank everyone. I said, Marcus, you don't need to thank anyone. You earned this. You've paid your dues. You've sacrificed more than anyone should have to sacrifice. Now it's time for you to live again, to do the work you were meant to do. He said, Your Honor, Catherine would be so happy. She always believed in my research, always encouraged me to keep working on cancer treatments. Even when she was dying, she'd tell me stories about patients I might help someday, cancers I might cure. I think she'd be proud that I'm going back, that I'm continuing the work. I said, Mr. Williams, I know she's proud. I know she's watching, and I know she's grateful that you loved her enough to give up everything. That's the greatest gift anyone can give. We hung up, and I sat in my office thinking about love, about sacrifice, about what truly matters. Marcus Williams had a PhD from Harvard, a successful career, a bright future, and he gave it all up without hesitation, without regret, because his wife needed him. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's love in its purest form. Before I close, I want to say something to anyone watching this who's caring for someone who's sick, who's sacrificing their career, their savings, their future to care for someone they love. What you're doing matters. What you're doing is heroic. What you're doing is the most important work in the world. Society might not recognize it, might not reward it, might not even acknowledge it, but it matters. You matter. And the person you're caring for knows. They know what you're giving up. They know what you're sacrificing, and they love you for it. Don't lose yourself completely. Don't forget who you are beneath the caregiver role. Because when the worst happens, when your loved one is gone, you're going to need to find your way back. Back to yourself, back to your purpose, back to your life. Like Marcus Williams is doing now. It won't be easy. It'll hurt. You'll grieve. You'll wonder if you made the right choices. But you did. You chose love. You chose humanity. You chose what matters most. And that's never wrong. To Marcus Williams, wherever you are now, I hope you're back in that lab. I hope you're doing brilliant research. I hope you're finding meaning again. And I hope Catherine is watching, proud of the man she married, grateful for the love you gave her, happy that you're continuing the work. That's what love looks like. Not grand gestures, not perfect moments, but quiet sacrifice, daily devotion, being there when it's hard, staying when others would leave. Marcus Williams showed me what that looks like, and I'll never forget it. This court is adjourned.